Check it out. You can find God in the timber, find Jesus in the pines, find heaven out yonder in the river, and I thank God that he's mine. And if you like what you're hearing, or you're already a fan, then go and tell all your friends and your mom and dad. Go spread the word to everybody you know. You can find God in the timber, find Jesus in the pines, find heaven out yonder in the river, and I thank God that he's mine. And if you like what you're hearing, or you're already a fan, then go and tell all your friends and your mom and dad. Go spread the word to everybody you know.
And welcome back, y'all, to another week of God in the Timber podcast. And I'm hoping that y'all like this intro music. Whenever I did this intro music one time before, and I didn't know how to fade it, so it went from like a real hard cut of singing to me talking, and I couldn't figure it out, so I just went back to the original intro music. So y'all let me know, do you like this intro music better, or do you like the original intro music? Because I still have both of them saved. But yeah, you would think with me having a podcast that I would look more into this editing stuff and all that good all the social media stuff that goes along with it. Like, I do have social media. Y'all can find God in the Timber on Facebook, Instagram, and I actually re-downloaded TikTok and then turned around and deleted TikTok again because I was listening to a story. I'll go into that story here just shortly. But it was a audio book, and it was talking about cutting things out of your life that gives you more of a reason to sin, I guess you could say. And the stigma around TikTok, you can use TikTok for good, you can use TikTok for bad. The algorithm always leans towards what gets the most views, or however the algorithm really works, because nobody understands 100% the way an algorithm actually works. But I could literally go through and like 5 million Christian posts on there and delete the algorithm that it had me on. Whatever, I've tried this a million ways, but it always goes back to half-naked girls dancing in front of a camera, or a whole bunch of vulgar language and all kind of stuff. So I just saw it as a way to minimize the temptation of sin. So I have deleted TikTok again. I may bring it back in a few months. Right now I just need to do what I'm calling like a spiritual cleanse, where I'm literally analyzing my life and what's caused me in the past to sin, and what has given me a hard time to fully accept Jesus Christ in my past. And I am really, really, really focusing hard on just being a better man. And that was what the book was about, that I got, I'm going to say gifted to me, but it wasn't a gift. My buddy actually sent it to me through a text message. So everybody should know, if you've listened to this podcast, which I've had Anthony on here before, but I am affiliated with Buzzaroo Saddles, and Beanie, which is the owner of Buzzaroo Saddles, he sends me audiobooks every now and then. But he sent me this one by Joby Martin. It's called, I want to say, Stand Up or Stand Firm and Act Like a Man. And I listened to it. And just a few weeks ago, guys, I got really, really busy with our Missouri trip, quit posting on social media, and I mean, I just got in that mental headspace of, I ain't gonna lie to y'all, I got in the mental headspace whenever I went to Missouri of, I saw a bunch of small deer, but I saw a lot of deer, and I'm like, yeah, no wonder why all these people out here have successful YouTube and successful social media, because they got a deer around every tree out here. And jealousy creeped in, and pride creeped in, because I'm like, if I lived out here, man, I would be one of the biggest YouTube stars. And look, that's not how you need to be. We're here to hunt God's animals that he has given us, whether you live in Alabama or Northwest Alabama, in southern middle Tennessee, Or you might go 4 or 5 sets without seeing a single deer. You might go 3 or 4 weeks without seeing a single deer. I posted on social media, I can't remember when, I could look it up, but I'm not looking it up right now, about what defines you as a successful hunter. And I want to say I actually posted on YouTube. It was a short, and it was a quote by Fred Barrett. I wish I could quote it off the top of my head. But I said you need to find success in every hunt. And that's where it is. You got to find success in every single hunt that you go on. But thank you, Benny, for sending me that book. I might be able to copy the link and post it on my social media for all the ones that wants to listen to it. I think it's on Spotify. I'm not sure. Don't hold me to that. I was listening to it on Audible, and I have started adding some more to my little cart, I guess what it is in Audible. I'm just got to figure out which one I want to listen to next. And I have started listening to Joby Martin's podcast. If y'all ain't listen to him. He's a good, I'm not going to say Southern boy. He is in Jacksonville, Florida, and he talks about being from the South. But I don't know him personally. But he is a very well-spoken individual, and he's bearded, tatted up. I see a lot of what he's saying that I can relate to my life that don't come from certain other people that I'll listen to. They could tell me the same exact thing, but I relate to the way this guy looks. Like, he kind of looks rough and tough and tatted up, and yeah. So, there's my tangent for tonight. Thank you, Benny, for that book. I really appreciate it. It has helped me a lot. And if you hear my dog, actually, guys and gals, I went back and listened to one of my podcasts. I know that is a big shot because I never do it. And I found out my mic picks up my little bitty 7-pound Yorkie walking across these floors on every single podcast. So if you hear that little click, 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 click behind me, that is my beautiful little Willa. She's a Yorkie, and she likes to be in the room with me, so she'll walk back and forth. But without further ado, we are going to get straight into this. I like telling stories. All of my stories are, what does Si say? Si Roberts said, 75% truthful. I don't know. It's funny. But I try to, all of my stories are stories that I've had that's related to my past, that has shaped me into the person I am today. So I was sitting in the crane. Right now I'm having to fill in for a guy who had a baby. Well, his wife had a baby. It'd be kind of odd if he had a baby, but, so I've been sitting in the crane a lot lately, and sitting in this little 8x8 cubicle hanging 30 feet in the air, you get a lot of time to think, and you get a lot of time to reflect on your past, and you get a lot of time to just have some good memories, but also have some bad memories. But guys and girls, I keep saying guys because I always imagine myself sitting around a campfire. That's the reason I say it, campfire stories, and a lot of times sitting around a hunting campfire is always the men, like always my cousins and friends that was around it. So if I do say guys, I apologize to all the women listeners out there. But we're going to jump right into some storytelling, and the Bible verse, we'll get to the end of it, but it does relate to it. I am going to start trying to incorporate these, and a lot of times I type these out on ChatGPT. I know everybody's against AI, but I'm not a very well spoken individual. Like, I'm not very well at figuring out how to really explain things the way that's in my mind and putting it down on a piece of paper. So I type everything out on ChatGPT, and I've said this before on the podcast, and then I just hit rewrite with better grammar, and that's what it does for me. So a lot of times these are going to sound like I'm reading word for word, but I'm actually still incorporating what is in my mind that didn't go on here. But it does give me like a guideline for what I had on my mind at that moment. But let's get into it. So, y'all, whenever I was a young child, like a very little kid, Kyle had an imagination that ran rampant. I could not find a single thing that kept my attention long. And come to find out, it was undiagnosed ADHD. I finally got diagnosed last year with ADHD, and it gets on my wife's nerves how many projects I start and do not finish. So I get bored so quick with everything. But my imagination whenever I was a kid was, I mean, crazy. It would go from robbing a home run from Mark McGwire, or picking up the blitz from Ray Lewis, or draining a three over LeBron's head. And I'm here to tell you, I was terrible at basketball, so I was never draining threes. But every one of those passions that I had at that time eventually become boredom and faded away. And don't get me wrong, I was decent at football and baseball. I was absolutely terrible at basketball. Like, y'all don't understand how terrible I was at basketball. I can dribble. I was probably the only 200-pound point guard that Waterloo basketball, in 7th grade at that, 7th and 8th grade, 200 pounds point guard that they ever had. But there's one thing that never faded, and I'm going to take you back to where I really was introduced into, not really hunting, but the first time I remember like pretty vividly seeing about it. And that passion, straight up, guys, was hunting. Like, don't get me wrong, I love fishing, I love doing all this other stuff, but my passion is hunting. I remember pretty vividly being, I say vividly, I don't remember the age. I was probably 5 or 6 years old. And I was at my uncle's house, and he had this wall of just hunting VHS tapes. I mean, TK and Mike, if y'all don't remember who TK and Mike with, look them up on YouTube. Funny. But he brought out, and I wish I knew the volume of it, but it was a Real Tree Monster Bucks volume. The VHS tapes. And I remember just watching and seeing these just awesome looking creatures come out with just massive bones on top of their head. At that time, they was bones to me. I didn't know what an antler was, but just massive. And I remember looking back behind me, and I saw all the bucks that my uncle had on the wall, and something in my mind clicked where it used to be, hey, I'm draining threes over LeBron's head while I'm shooting basketball out in the yard, or I just robbed a home run for Mark McGwire, or I just filled in the A gap and picked up that blitz from Ray Lewis. This was something I looked at, and I'm like, hey, this is a thing that an everyday Joe Smo person can do. And I was hooked. Like, I would sit there and watch them. Every time I went to my uncle's house, he always made me go out there and feed the chickens. I'd go out there and feed the chickens. I would get flogged by so many hens because he had so many chicks running around, and my little 5 or 6 year old brain was like, let's catch the chicks. And the old mama hen would come up there and flog the mess out of me. And like, I just remember how like walking through that door, feeding them chickens, walking through that door, and I'd tell him, hey, put on one of them movies. Put on one of them movies. That's what I told him all the time. And he knew exactly what I was talking about. But see, this is the reason why I don't never type stuff out. I'm already off of what I was supposed to say. But so even though I played baseball from ages 4 to 18, so from the time I was 4 years old until the time I graduated, I wasn't allowed to play football until I got into like middle school. At Waterloo, it was all the same school, so I wasn't allowed to play football until I was in 7th grade. So I played from 7th grade to graduation. And then basketball. I quit basketball. I say quit. I quit playing basketball in 8th grade because I realized basketball season falls in the same time as deer season does. And I remember talking to my daddy and my mama, I believe. She was at the table, but I'm not 100% certain on that. And I pretty much told him, I'm like, look, I can either sit on a bench during a basketball game and maybe get 3 or 8 minutes of playing time a game. Maybe get 3 or 8 minutes. Or I could ride the bus home every day, come in, put my camouflage on, and hunt every single day during basketball season. So, needless to say, that was the easiest decision I ever made. But now I'm back on track to my little notes. So, I don't know if y'all remember or not, but a lot of those early Real Tree Monster Buck videos were gun hunts. I remember it like, I don't remember the exact volume that I saw the first time they brought a bow out, but I remember them bringing out this big old hunk of metal with these cams. Now that I know that's cams, but I said wheels at the time. These wheels on it that was about the size of a silver dollar. We all know what I'm talking about, like your old Bears, your old PACs, where they had them tiny cams where your let off was non-existent. Like, if you was pulling 70 pounds, you was holding 70 pounds back. But I remember just being hooked from the very first time I saw that stick and string. And I started begging my dad for one almost immediately. But growing up, we wasn't really poor. We wasn't hurting for anything, but my mom and dad prioritized where the money went a lot. And a new bow at that time just wasn't in our budget. But I can't remember exactly how my dad ended up with the first bow he gave me. But I remember I was around 7 years old, maybe 8 years old, and my dad came home from work with a bow and one single arrow. Yes, just one. And we had an old couch out there, and he took the cushion off of it, and he set it up, and he said, "This is your target, and that's your arrow. Do not lose it. If you lose it, you're not getting another one." You know how mischievous little boys are. I was good for like 2 weeks out there just pulling back, shooting this cushion, pulling back, shooting this cushion. And then one day, we lived on top of a really big hill down there on a gravel road in Waterloo, and I remember this vividly as all get out. This was an old, I guess it'd be like the old Easton aluminum arrows, because it was camouflage, and it had them like, it looks like 8-inch feathers on it. And I just remember, I wonder if I pull this bow back and aim it straight up, how high this arrow would actually go. Needless to say, that arrow has never been found again. And my dad was, needless to say, he was furious, because he told me if I lost that arrow, I wouldn't get another one. So let's fast forward to, I think I was like 14. My brother traded I can't remember what he traded for, but my brother's all about trading some stuff. So if you ever got anything that you want to trade, holler at me, and I'll ask my brother if he wants to trade, type of deal. But my brother traded something, and he traded for a recurve bow. And he's like, "Look, I don't have no use for this, but you can use it." So, and that's the only thing my brother that has ever traded for that I ended up with that he did not trade. So, backstory to get off of this. My brother's brought home a Marlin 30-30 with a golden trigger, and he's like, "I just traded a 243 for this gun for you." Remember that word, for you. And like 2 years later, maybe not even 2 years later, I've done killed like 4 or 5 deers with this 30-30 now. And, excuse me. And I come home one day and the gun's gone. And my brother's like, "Yeah, I traded it off for me a new 30-06. So I'm without a gun at that point. So I'm using my brother's other 30-06 that my dad gave him. And then my dad ended up buying me one. So buying me one from a guy down the road, and I still have that gun set in my gun cabinet to this day. I'm actually about to buy a scope and put on that 30-06 my dad got me and hunt with it again this year, just for a memorial hunt type deal. So, but let's get back on it. My brothers told me I could use this bow, but it didn't have a good string, and didn't have a quiver to take nothing in the woods, no broadheads, no arrows, no nothing. So there was a bow shop right up the road from us it was actually called the Bow Shack in Counts, Tennessee, and they're no longer in business. But we went up there and walked in. My dad bought the string, the quiver, and the broadheads. Guess what he didn't buy? The arrows. I had to buy the arrows from what money I saved from working with my dad. I think he was a little bit salty about the arrows still, because he told me not to lose that one like 7 years ago, and I shot it into the heavens and never saw it again. So I think he was a little bit salty about it. But I remember every single day I would get out there and I would shoot this recurve at a old couch cushion. And then finally I graduated. Your boy graduated to one of them like little bitty block foam targets, like the kids use targets that you buy at Walmart for like $14 now. Yeah, I graduated to one of them that had like the little silhouette of a deer on it. So every day I got very, very persistent with it from like 30, I would say about 35 yards and in. I was a good shot. And it was just a passion that took over. And then I think I've told the story on here. Y'all have to let me know in the comments, or that for the ones that have listened to the podcast, if I've told the story of my first archery kills. But if I'm not going to say it or tell y'all right now, just because that's another story for another day. But it was just the passion. That was the only passion that I truly had that never faded away, was bow hunting. Looking back at it now, with, being older and being a little bit wiser and growing into my faith, I finally understand something that I didn't understand back then, because I didn't know where my path was being led back in. And this is where we're going to get into the Bible verse of things. In Psalms 37:4, it says, "Delight yourself also in the Lord, and he shall give you the desires of your heart." So what desires of my heart did God give me? So he gave me the desire for the woods. He gave me an obsession of archery that never faded. The peace that I found in the trees long before I even understood why. Like, just being out there in the yard, we've always lived out in the sticks. Like, I live on a highway now, and it's I love it here, but it's annoying here at the same time because you hear traffic. We've always lived like pretty good bit ways off the road. So just being out there in my yard with the wind blowing through the dead leaves of fall, and out there just constantly shooting that bow, I just felt a peace in that. But now looking back at it, y'all, it wasn't random. It wasn't dumb luck. It wasn't something that Kyle did. There was nothing that Kyle did to really instill this passion besides being persistent. It was something that God planted in me long before I could ever see any purpose behind this. So now you might be scratching your head. Purpose? What is your purpose in hunting? Hunting wasn't just my hobby, and it's still not just my hobby. I don't look at it as a job because I don't get paid to do this. It was the clay that was, it was the clay that Jesus was molding, or God was molding in me. It was, I'm way off subject here, guys and gals. Like, God is like really on me right now. I'm way off subject. Well, not off subject, but way off my notes. I guess that's the reason why I don't take notes. But let's get back to it. He was forming me out of clay. There's a hymn out there. I'm the clay and he's the potter. I can't remember the rest of it. We sang it at church all the time. But he was using that clay in the hunting or the outdoorsy aspect, in my opinion, of me. And it's like, hey, this right here is going to shape his life. It's going to help him have a testimony. And guess what it led to? It led to this very podcast. It led to God in the Timber Outdoor Ministry. It led to being able to start, hopefully within the year, if God sees it fits, it's going to help us be able to take kids that does not get to do things like this and put them in the outdoors, where we're going to have like outdoor archery shoots. I've been talking to some local archery clubs archery shops next to me, and I actually started pretty much working part-time at one of them, and we're talking about starting an archery club for youth and for adults. So your purpose, I think I've already spoke on this verse before, I'm not sure. Your purpose is not, I don't know how to say this. I know how to say it, but this is one reason why I use ChatGPT. Like, I have the idea in my mind and I could write it down on paper, but it's hard to really enunciate and it get through the way that I want it to get through. But I get to look at the averages of the ages that listen to this podcast, and the average age is 22 through 38 on my podcast, or the podcast listeners. But guess what? If one child hears this, if one child or one teenager hears this, your purpose is not designed on where you're at this given moment. At 18 years old, y'all, I was an alcoholic. I was raised in church, but I was an alcoholic, and I did not see the purpose in going to church. I did not see the purpose in Christ, but I always stayed in that woods, and I always hunted. And eventually, that's where I saw God to pull me back in through my wife. My wife's actually the one who helped me walk, and I'm going to talk about that here in a couple weeks again. But don't let your defining moment be what you're going through right now, unless that defining moment is falling on your knees and asking God to forgive you of your sins and repenting of your sins. And that's where, once you make that commitment, you're going to fail. Because the devil is going to, I hate to say it like that, you're going to fail. Because that's when once the devil loses one of his soldiers, he goes after you tenfold to try to get his soldier back. I've seen it way too many times, y'all. Way too many times. So, you have two choices. You could either fall back into his army, or you can man up and go to work for God. Go to work for Jesus. But thank y'all for another awesome week. Y'all tune in next Thursday and join us again.